if you remember, you and I went to Hananu, the very famous dive bar in Venice. And for those watching that don't know LA well, in Venice, there's a place called Hananu, and it's this sawdust on the floor bar that serves one of the best burgers and bar food in LA. This griddle that's in this place has been there for like a century. You know what I mean? I think the griddle's like a century old, has been in Hananu since it opened. This is a place where the Doors used to hang out. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, they all came through town. They would all go to Hananu. So, of course, I had to take Manny there. Hey everybody, welcome back to EventSpeak with me, Big John, CEO of Beyond Experiential. On today's episode, we're going to go across the border to our friends in Canada. Today's guest, Manny Kapranos, who is the Sales and Marketing Director for Smart Jets and VIP Completions, is not only a friend and an associate, somebody that we've done quite a bit of work together in the past on other projects for another company. I'm excited to welcome to the format today. Manny, thanks for joining us. Welcome to EventSpeak.
Hey, thanks for having me, John. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, man. So how are you doing up there in Montreal? First of all, like you guys in Montreal, you guys are full on winter, right? Like you guys are basically like up there buried in snow, I'm guessing.
You caught us on a good week. It'll be kind of warm, planning to bring the barbecue up tomorrow, but yeah, it's still winter. There's still snow on the ground. It's going to get cold the week after, 0-degree temperatures, but spring has sprung, so we're at the tail end of it.
It's so funny because, as you know, I grew up in Chicago, and it's here in Los Angeles, it's like 63 today, and it's sunny, but it's cold, and everyone's freaking out. Like it's supposed to be 54 tomorrow, high 54 tomorrow with rain. So people are like, "Oh my God, what do we do? Like, shut the windows, close the doors." It's funny how the difference. You know what I mean?
It makes you soft, right? You get used to it. You get used to the weather you're in, and I'm sure you bust out the puffy jacket.
Hey man, I'm wearing a sweater. I'm inside and I'm wearing a sweater. I mean, that's what I can tell you. So Manny, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do as a sales and marketing director for Smart Jets, VIP Completions, and why people should know about it.
Well, sales and marketing director, I'm with the company to help them kind of drive business development, connect them to my network that I've built over the years working in the industry. On the SmartJet side of the business, buy and sell pre-owned aircraft, business aircraft. And on the VIP side of the business, it's about the refurbishment of the interior of the aircraft in order to breathe new life into something that might not be looking as good as it should be after a decade of use. I do both the sales component and the marketing component. So, whatever that entails means, everything from brand design, the website, our email campaigns, our digital campaigns on the marketing side. And we've got a small team of people that work on that. And then on the sales side, it's bringing in revenue, business development, expanding the network, and trying to find new customers for the products and services that we sell.
Sure. Okay. Now, I'm sure to a lot of folks watching, and up until a few years ago, how we met working on the Private Aviation side with a different company, I'm sure it's something that is very mysterious to a lot of folks because it's a small percentage of folks that can actually afford to be in the private aviation space. Now, that being said, we were chatting a little bit off camera beforehand how the pandemic affected private aviation. Now, my perspective, as I mentioned, was I would think, in my limited experience, that for a lot of people that were kind of on the precipice that may have been flying in jet brokerages such as NetJets or whatever the case may be, would make the jump to purchasing just because they don't want to be sharing jets that are being used by other people in light of the pandemic. Your perspective on that would be what? Would you say that the pandemic has hurt private aviation or helped it?
I think my answer to this is that it's hurt private aviation less than it's hurt commercial aviation. So I don't think business aviation has come out of this unscathed. I don't think the pandemic has brought to the forefront a ton of people that are completely new to this, that have never been on a private airplane and said, oh, you know what, I used to pay $5,000 to fly to the UK in business class or first class from New York. I'm going to start flying private. It's quite the leap between that and flying private. So I don't think there's been a rush to the market. What I've seen is that people that had the means are continuing to fly. I think for personal purposes, that has continued to stay strong. The big driver, I think, what a lot of people are forgetting about this business and a lot of businesses is it's tied to economic growth, right? And while you're in the pandemic, I think a lot of people that are in business, CEOs, they've pulled back on discretionary spending, right? And I think that part of the business has probably not taken off like people would have thought it would. Now, things are looking good now. Things are on the upside with the vaccination rates and the pandemic seeming to be coming to an end. I have a feeling that business aviation is going to see a tremendous recovery, and one that is much better than commercial aviation, right? So sure. I guess to summarize and maybe paraphrase my own thoughts, I don't think it was the big boom that a lot of people thought it was going to be. It's just that business aviation was less affected by the pandemic in terms of total people flying and transacting. And I think things are looking good going forward just because of the strength of the economy that's about to be unleashed here.
Sure. And as we were also talking a bit off camera, our two countries, Canada and the United States, are so closely tied in to each other, and especially from an economic standpoint. So with this coming $1.9 trillion stimulus package coming, you're anticipating to see a big boost in the, I imagine, not just in Canadian private aviation, but in the Canadian economy in general.
What the U.S. does ultimately affects Canada very much so. It affects the whole world. Canada being the biggest trading partner for the U.S., with supply chains so interlinked, this influx of cash is going to benefit, Canada for sure. And at the same time, Canada has its own programs and is dumping tons of money into the system as well. Big infrastructure plans, just direct payments to people who were affected by it. So there's a lot of money slushing around, right, in Canada and in the U.S. And I think we're going to see the effects of that in the coming months.
Absolutely. And that's an interesting side note, is that, it sounds from what I've read and what I've heard, the Canadian government has really stepped up to take care of its citizens throughout this pandemic. There's been continuing payments from the government, continuing stimulus, if you will. And as I'm sure you're well aware, for us, we're just now going into our third package, which will be representing a third payment in a year to the American citizens, which, let's face it, just isn't enough. It's just not cutting it.
In the grand scheme of things, if it's, if all you get, and I don't fully understand it, but if all somebody is expecting is those three payments throughout the year, it's not a lot of money, right? It's quite different here. Canada has a very strong social safety net in place. Healthcare is the example that most people are aware of, but It goes beyond that, employment insurance or unemployment insurance. And for those affected by the pandemic, there was a specific program put in place that was benefiting those affected with $2,000 per month per person, right? So that's Canadian dollars, but still, it's not a bad chunk of change.
Yeah.
And it was almost available to almost anybody, right? I think there were very few limitations on and restrictions on what you needed to supply as information in order to be able to access that. And then there was stuff for businesses as well. So lines of credit or credit facilities and rent subsidies as well. We won't get into the details of the trouble implementing some of this stuff, but there was a lot of money on the table that was put there by the government to help people get through this.
Wow. So $2,000 a month, and that has been an ongoing thing for most Canadian citizens since this all began.
In one form or another, I think at some point it changed names. It was called the CERB program at the beginning, and there was a website up in a couple of weeks. You went on, you logged on, you gave a couple of pieces of information, and then the money was direct deposited into your bank account. And then as we started getting to the tail end of the year, they changed this into a different program. I believe it's called the Canada Recovery Program. I'm not sure what the amounts are. Similar. It's just an extension of a subsidy, of an unemployment benefit available to people. So, there's money being pumped into the system, but it's somebody's going to pay for it eventually.
Of course. And I'm sure there's people watching that, with levy where, taxes being higher or however that is, being recouped or paid for. But the point is that it's there,
right.
For Americans, while there was, SBA disaster loans that became available readily to just about every small business, which was, basically, a low interest rate, long-term loan that could help out your business. And then these payroll protection loans, these PPP loans as they called, which were that could be, forgivable loans. But that was only in these stimulus packages. So there was, with this one they just passed, there'll be the third installment of it, which, mind you, is a record-setting package that is bringing a lot of money to the table, and it's desperately needed. As really, the country is suffering. The citizens are suffering, and just even here in Los Angeles, as I know you spent a lot of time here, man. Like, I'll drive through familiar neighborhoods, and the homeless tents and the homeless encampments, everything is just, there's so many of them. It's really incredible and overwhelmingly sad at the same time. And you say to yourself, why isn't the government doing more? Why isn't there more assistance to these people? Which obviously is a whole other rabbit hole to go down. But it's just it's interesting for me to hear it from the perspective of someone that is our near neighbor. I've done a lot of work and travel in Canada, including the beautiful city that you live in, Montreal, and it's interesting to me how, while our cultures are similar and our countries are similar, they're so vastly different when it comes down to it. And you hear the arguments of what you have works and what doesn't. And I would imagine the Canadian citizens have their opinions just as the same as the U.S. citizens do of our country and vice versa. But it's just an interesting dichotomy to me. So let's backtrack a little bit, Manny. And how did you get into private aviation? Where did that enter? Was it something you set out, like you're like, I'm going to get into private aviation, that's what I want to do? Or was it more like, it just sort of a happenstance? Walk us through that.
Yeah, I had a weird pathway into this business, an interesting one, but my early career was financial services. I did it for close to 8 years, and I wasn't seeing the career trajectory I was expecting. So, doing what most people in that universe do, I went to do a master's degree. I did an MBA, thinking that it would just propel me further into financial services, banking. I thought I was going to be an investment banker once I got out of this program. But I think Montreal is the kind of town. It's not New York, right? So that's the opportunities to get really well-paying banking jobs don't really exist. And one of the best employers in the city is a company called Bombardier, right? We keep referring to this company that we both work for. It's
the
Bombardier.
Other company.
Yeah, the other company. And, they reached out to me and they offered me something that was very interesting in strategy and governance, right? So it was a strategy job. It was a control job. It would put the skills that I just acquired into use. And that's where it all began, right? And, spent a couple of years doing that, then was approached and they said, hey, would you like to be part of the sales team in Europe? I said, sure, of course. They tossed me over, lived in London for a little bit, did that, covered, a territory of Eastern Europe for 2.5 years. And then it was time to come back home. And then I got into the marketing role, right? So, it's been a strange pathway for me. But even after leaving the company, all the opportunities and consultancy mandates that I've taken, they've all been in this industry, right? Because it's small, and the most valuable thing that you build is that network.
Sure.
And everything has come through the network after that, right? So, the 2-3 companies that I've worked for after leaving Bombardier, they're all in that space. They're all in business aviation. And I've been helping them with what I do best, which is basically market and business development type mandates, roles, consulting, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it kind of laid the foundation, if you will, for what you're doing now, which obviously makes sense. I mean, it's a very small industry, as I've learned, and as you mentioned, I wasn't sure if it was okay to mention them. So since we have it out in the open, but that is to the folks at home watching, one of the gigs that I've been doing for years for an agency partner friend that's client is Bombardier, is how Manny and I met. And we worked with them in their special events and concerning mock-ups, which for those that don't know what a mock-up is, when an aviation company is making a new jet, before it goes into mass production, they will make a mock-up of it, or a model, if you will. That is this wingless, multi-million-dollar fuselage that lives on a truck that will travel to various locations and do these special events. I always think of, Manny, when the faithful call came through for what was several years ago when the G7K ended up at the conference in Beverly Hills at the hotel, and you had this idea, and it was just this for people in LA know the space because I believe it's still empty in there. But next to Beverly Hilton is this where the old department store is, this giant piece of land that is just empty. It's a big vacant lot, but it's right connected to the Beverly Hilton. And this big conference that happens every year that attracts a lot of, shall we say, clientele that fly private come in. And Manny had this idea to bring in this mock-up of this spectacular jet that would live on the perfect location of this dirt lot. And I remember standing on the top of the parking garage with you, and you said to me, you're like, I want to put the G7K right there. And it was really quite fascinating to see the whole thing come to life. And it seemed like it was a success for you guys, would you say?
I think in everybody's career, you've got a couple of feathers that you put in your cap, and you're like,
yeah,
that was certainly one of the best events ever produced in my time there, right? It was not only was it spectacular, right? Not only was it just impressive, the whole logistics of it was just wild to get that done. And, kudos to you and the team on your side to making that happen. But it was effective. That's at the end of the day, why do we do this, right? Why do we go out of our way to to create these events, these spaces. It's to do business at the end of the day, right? It's to have an impact, and I'm talking about business related type events, but it's the combination of something spectacular at the right place at the right time, right? So all those three things work together, and just for me to go back and to the meeting that we had, kind of laying it out. It's great that I can call you and say, come meet me on the rooftop of a parking lot, and you're like, yeah, let's do this.
So let's do it, man. Let's do it. It was, and I remember it was very random. It was very random, and to folks watching at home, as you work with people and you develop friendships, Manny and I are also both foodies. Maybe shocking for people to know of me, but so we would tend to regale each other of, have you tried this place? Have you tried that place? So if I remember correctly, we went and met on the parking lot, top of this parking lot garage roof, scoped this out, and I'm going to have to look and see. I'm sure I have photos from it that our trusty production team here at EventSpeak might be able to splice into this so that people could see what we're talking about, because it really was one of the most spectacular things that I think I've ever been part of. And and the kudos to the Two Heads team, the agency that really helped take your vision and bring it to life. And I was very excited to, of course, be part of that. But if you remember, you and I went to Hananu, the very famous dive bar in Venice. And for those watching that don't know LA well, in Venice there's a place called Hananu, and it's this sawdust on the floor bar that serves one of the best burgers and bar food in LA. This griddle that's in this place has been there for like a century. You know what I mean? I think the griddle's like a century old, has been in Hananu since it opened. This is a place where the Doors used to hang out. Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, they all came through town. They would all go to Hananu. So, of course, I had to take Manny there. So, Manny, let's have a little fun as we're talking towards the end of the unit here. We were talking about LA restaurants. We were talking about how much you miss them. Give me your top 3 favorite restaurants in LA and a little bit of why each of them are your favorite. He's like, oh, okay. My goodness.
It's tough. It's tough. Bad Mash in downtown LA.
Bad Mash. Okay. I'm writing these down just so you know.
I got to give it up because it's a couple of Canadian boys done good, gone down to Los Angeles. They've opened up Indian restaurant. Love Indian food. The neighborhood I live in is predominantly Indian, Pakistani. Great restaurants here, and I'm getting that same vibe in LA. And they brought a proper poutine with them as well. But with a little
okay.
Indian slant. Chicken tikka poutine. Those 3 words have me in a car from the Beverly Hilton to downtown LA.
Whoo!
So that was really good. Still in downtown LA. Bestia. That was just a great dinner. And the other thing about LA and where you live is the ability to, outdoor dining is very different in Los Angeles than it is in Montreal. But, it's
really
just,
it's how so, if I may sidetrack.
Just temperature wise, your ability to do it.
We can do it a lot more.
So that was great Italian restaurant, just fantastic. If we're on the Italian tip, and I think this is more just because it's the first kind of scenester restaurant anybody took me in LA. Some work colleagues from there took me to Ciccioni's in Beverly Hills, and just the scene was something I've never seen before. Just the valet parking, the cars. It impressed me. It just
Beverly Hills.
They got
baby.
us the corner table, of course, and Bobby Flay walks in. So kid from Montreal, first trip to LA, and this is the experience. So I have to mention that. That was
man.
was great. Tacos. Street tacos. What was it called? Like a little window place with a patio on the side. I believe it was called Tu Madre.
Tu Madre.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar. I mean, there's a few of them here.
Yeah. I think you guys are lucky, and you don't understand how lucky you are. Like, my new job takes me to Florida, where all the work is done on the aircraft. That's where the head office is. I go back and forth. Florida's got some good taco joints. I'm not going to take anything away from it, but it doesn't come close to
not like Los Angeles, buddy.
No, nothing like that.
No,
I could go on and on. We could turn this into
I know you
show if you want to, but that's the great thing about what we do, right? Like, this, when I was in marketing and more in the event space, but even now, like, the travel component is this ability to go and discover a city, and the way I do it is through food, and I think maybe you do as well. And I miss that. I really do. I miss the ability to explore what a city has to offer.
I couldn't agree more, and I know we've talked about this in the past, and that is exactly how I travel, and discovering the city through food is probably one of my favorite things to do. And on that note, I would always enjoy my trips to Montreal, just because it's a beautiful city. I used to say that it reminded me of a cleaner, smaller version of New York City. But when I first started going up there, it was for the Warped Tour back in the day, and they used to host it at a venue that was across the river from downtown Montreal, and you could just get this beautiful, breathtaking view of the city. And for those of us that have done Warped, and a lot of folks watching have done Warped, know that, like, when we get there is when you'd actually have a little bit of downtime coming into it, maybe a day off the day beforehand, because a border crossing takes a long time, with multiple tour buses and vehicles and stuff coming through the border. So we'd always come in the night before, so we'd get a chance to explore into the city. And unlike other, like going to Quebec City or more predominantly like French-speaking cities where it was difficult to navigate, I found Montreal to be quite welcoming, and like also so many folks, that spoke English. And it's interesting. It's like I feel like as Americans, a lot of us, we speak English, and then when we go other places, we're hoping other people speak English as well, which in a lot of cases they do, and then you'll find speak other languages as well, and bilingual, trilingual, whatever the case is. So it was just, I would say my question to you, talking about Montreal, is, so if I get back up there, where would you take me? What would be the place that we would go to? What's your go-to spot?
It's not one. That's the thing. We're just gonna.
All right.
We're gonna get you a hotel room on Notre Dame, and we're just gonna hit every restaurant. That strip is great. It's
down the way.
I don't know. Of course, we'll take you to Joe Beef, right? We've got to take you there. And
Joe Beef, you had me at Joe Beef, dude.
Yeah, we're if I'm only allowed to take you to one place, I'll take you to Joe Beef. But we're not.
Clearly not. Maybe a better question to wrap up here would be: is there? I mean, yes, of course. Anybody that has ever watched a movie or perhaps has traveled knows that in Canada, poutine, fries and gravy, and cheese curds is a national treasure. But is there anything that we don't know about that is like, when you come to Montreal, you have to have this dish somewhere, and it's probably a dish that maybe a lot of restaurants make?
I'm going to start a little bit of a war here. I know you have an affinity for New York. Look, our bagel is better, man. That's it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah,
going for the throat.
right there, just in for the kill. I mean,
A better bagel in Montreal. All right, I'll hear you out. Tell me why.
It's a better bagel. Look, I think one of the things that's made me, you're describing me as a foodie. My love of food comes from the fact that, Montreal has per capita only second to New York, the number of restaurants per capita. Before trying to be a banker, before all this financial education, I've worked food service. So, and I have a lot of friends that are restaurant owners that still work food service, and you see them struggling, right? And it's tough on them. And I'm honestly concerned what the scene is going to look like, once we get out of it. We were talking about, in restaurant dining opening up, right? So LA is this week, you said?
I believe they're projecting the 16th.
I think they're expecting something similar. They're going to wait for our March break to finish, and then they're going to open up restaurants in some capacity after that. I'm hoping that what we see is not a bunch of KFCs and PF Chang's that made it through, and all the places we love that are built by people from the community, from the city we live in, are still around. And we do our part. We order, we go, we do pickup. We avoid the Uber app and call it in so we can save them those 30 points. But yeah, there's just Montreal is a great food city, so much to see. Bagels, poutine, smoked meat are just those are the cliches, but there's whatever you want, it's here. And
you could find
guys
it there.
Doing it exceptionally well.
I couldn't agree more. First off, on the supporting the local restaurants, and it's something that I think I know my family, my friends, we've all have tried to make a point to, if you can afford to order out as much as you could, go directly to the restaurants. We've been fortunate in LA that a lot of the outdoor dining has remained mostly open. It did shut down again back in early December, and then was closed till I want to say mid-January, if not a little bit later. Then reopen, and now as the numbers continue to fall, these vaccines continue to be distributed. We're seeing it now. They're saying 25% capacity next week. But I heard a disturbing number that like over 150,000 businesses won't come back on a national scale. If that isn't even a low number, or potentially a higher number than that, which is really quite sad. Because when you think about it, is it really anything that anybody could have potentially tried to plan for? How could you? You're never going to think that a pandemic is on the horizon. And I will end with this, and you might find this interesting because it's an event statistic that a friend of mine shared with me. But there was one big event that did have pandemic insurance, and in Wimbledon, the big tennis event or whatever, and evidently they took out like a $20 million a year policy for a pandemic 20 years ago. And somehow that line item never got nixed year after year after year. And evidently when this pandemic hit, they got like a 9-figure check.
It's those Brits. They'll insure anything, right? Lloyd's of London, didn't they famously insure Tina Turner's legs or
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. And I heard that a friend of Lucas Keller was on the show, and just from LA's Milk and Honey, one of my music industry friends, and Lucas would know that type of thing, and he shared that stat with us on the show, and I'm like, Holy cow, that's incredible. Manny, tell me, if anybody's interested to know more about smart jets or VIP completions, where can they find that information? Is there a website or anything you want to share?
Yeah, smartjets.com. That's the dealer broker side of the business, and VIPcompletions.net. That's the refurbishment side of the business.
Easy enough. Manny Kapranos, everybody. Thank you so much, Manny, for joining us. It's really good to connect with you, my friend, and talk with you again.
Really
I hope this finds you and your family doing well, and please, by all means, come back to the show anytime. As always, we're going to continue the conversation over at EventSpeak.com. I'm still Big John, and this is still EventSpeak with me. Until next time, this is me reminding you guys to be sure to take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you.